For half a year, my brand new apartment sat empty, a silent testament to my solitary life. Yet every month a water bill arrived, baffling me. The building management insisted their meters were flawless, and the charges, though inexplicable, were legitimate. Frustration simmered until I finally decided to install surveillance cameras. I'd poured my life savings, accumulated over years since graduation, into this loft apartment. The thought of marriage had long faded, and I figured a cat would be sufficient company. During the interior construction phase, my unit's progress was rapid. But the compact space necessitated many built-in cabinets, causing formaldehyde levels to skyrocket. My only option was to let the apartment air out for 6 months before moving in. Throughout this period, the building's housekeeper diligently collected my water payments. The consumption, astonishingly, matched that of young couples already residing in the building. How could this be? Yet, the management repeatedly checked the meter, always asserting no issues. The bills weren't exorbitant, so I grudgingly accepted my bad luck. What good would arguing do? This time, however, my patience snapped. I immediately ordered an online surveillance camera. The next evening, the package arrived. I rushed to the apartment, installing the camera above the entrance, pointing directly at the kitchen sink, with audio coverage extending to the adjacent bathroom. My suspicion was that the management was manipulating water pressure, causing the hot water tank's pressure relief valve to leak. All I needed was proof, and they'd be held accountable. The building soared almost 30 stories high, with 40 units per floor and a staggering density of 5.99. Even inside, I could hear the faint cries and piano melodies echoing from my neighbors. It was almost 10 p.m. I worried about ever finding a quiet night once I moved in. Just as I locked the door, the fluorescent lights in the hallway flickered erratically before plunging into darkness. A muffled pop accompanied my press of the elevator button, and everything went black. "Just my luck," I muttered. I messaged the housekeeper. "Lights out on the 28th floor, please fix them tomorrow." While waiting for the elevator, I lit a cigarette and opened the camera app. What I saw nearly made me drop my phone. In the dimly lit room, the kitchen faucet dripped sporadically, as if something was obstructing the flow. From the adjacent bathroom, the shower ran, accompanied by the distinct flush of a toilet. It was as if an invisible person had moved into my home. The chilling images on the camera almost sent my soul fleeing, despite my considerable height and build. With no other choice, I disturbed the night security guard, a stout man with a head of graying hair, asking him to accompany me back up. "Sir, are you sure you haven't had too much to drink?" the guard asked, sipping from a cup of water, as he surveyed the perfectly dry bathroom floor and kitchen sink. He pointed to the main valve in the kitchen cabinet. "This isn't even open. How could water be flowing?" I twisted it. He was right. But if the main valve was closed, where was the water consumption coming from? Had the darkness in the hallway played tricks on my eyes? The newly purchased camera, frustratingly, lacked automatic recording. For days, I obsessively checked the camera, but nothing unusual occurred. My anxieties gradually subsided. The end of the month approached, my chosen auspicious day to move in. I left the lights on for 3 days prior, a traditional good luck charm. Though I typically didn't believe in superstitions, I invited friends over for my moving-in party. The more lively the better, I thought, to ward off bad spirits. After dinner, we drank and played cards, losing track of time in our boisterous revelry. Then a knock on the door, a muffled, ambiguous voice, neither distinctly male nor female, echoed from outside. "Could you please keep it down? Only about 30% of the units in this building are occupied." My friends, disheartened, dispersed. I sat in the apartment, the sounds of a woman crying and a piano playing grating on my nerves. "They tell me to be quiet, but they're making noise too." Fumed. Politeness should be reciprocal. I grabbed my keys and went to apartment 2829 to my left. The piano music paused briefly, then resumed its mournful melody. No answer. I tried apartment 2831 to my right. Again no one. But when I pressed my ear to the door, the muffled sobs within grew clearer. Before I could process it, a violent thud against the door jolted my ear. Was it domestic abuse? As a responsible citizen, I immediately called the police. When the police arrived and forced open the door, I was stunned. It was a bare, unfurnished apartment, barely 20 square meters, with nowhere to hide a person. The officer's suspicious gazes made me intensely uncomfortable. But I distinctly heard it through the door. "I swear, officer, the woman has been crying for days," and there was a loud bang from inside. I recounted the scene, still disbelieving, even stepping inside to search for evidence. The windows were sealed, the room hot and reeking of plaster, but my keen sense of smell detected another stranger scent amidst the harsh odor. Following the stench, I found myself facing the wall bordering my unit, staring at a pair of wet eyes. The crying woman. I'd found her. Someone had died in the apartment building, and I was the only one who knew. By the time I finished giving my statement, dawn had broken. Along with the police, the building manager, Li Jun, was present. Her Mandarin was heavily accented, and her eyes held a warning. "Mr. Zheng, please keep today's events confidential. This will affect the selling and rental prices of your apartment." Under normal circumstances, I would have bristled at her arrogant tone, but today's events were too bizarre. Recalling some details the police had mentioned, a chill ran down my spine. Only half of the woman's skull had been excavated from the wall. Those wet eyes, as if still weeping, sent shivers down my spine. The deceased's identity remained unknown. The adjacent apartment hadn't been sold. During the initial construction, there were no hallway cameras, making it nearly impossible to find the culprit. And where was the rest of the body? My old apartment had already been rented out. Staying in a hotel was an unaffordable luxury, considering my bank balance. Gritting my teeth, I returned to my apartment with Li Jun thankfully. The wall hadn't been completely excavated, allowing me to delude myself that nothing had happened. But the piano music night after night drove me insane. I bought a pair of earplugs. No longer would I be a busybody. What I didn't hear I wouldn't see, and what I didn't see I wouldn't think about. The next few months passed quickly. More than half the units were now occupied. The resident group chat was constantly filled with complaints. 1840. Management, check the cameras. My food keeps disappearing. 1839. That's a camera blind spot. And what kind of thief only steals food? Probably mice. Ha ha ha. 2011. Whose kid is crying all night on this floor? It's so loud. 820. Landlord 920, can you please walk quieter at night? Baigan Hua Kai. Whose apartment upstairs has someone playing piano every day? They won't even answer the door. You are listening to Apartment the Phantom Tenant on YouTube channel MrBinh. Seeing that last message, I immediately sent a friend request. When I learned it was the resident of apartment 2729, my heart skipped a beat. So I wasn't the only one hearing the piano. Li Jun had told me that apartment was rented out. When she checked the cameras, she saw a man occasionally wearing a hat and mask, looking suspicious. Noise complaints weren't serious enough for drastic measures. I decided to write my phone number on a slip of paper and slide it under his door, hoping he'd contact me. That night, just as I drifted off, I was startled awake by furious pounding on my door from the floor below. Even through my earplugs, I knew whoever it was, they weren't friendly. I removed the earplugs, suppressing my anger, and peered through the peephole. Nothing but darkness. Someone had covered it. The police frequently warned residents in the group chat not to open their doors to strangers to avoid human traffickers. But I was a tall, strong man. Who would dare? Housekeeper, housekeeper. Send security up here. A wise man doesn't stand under a crumbling wall. When you need help, ask for it. That was a hard lesson learned from years of navigating society. Through the peephole, I recognized the chubby security guard from before. I immediately opened the door. Standing beside him was a man whose face was a nightmare to behold, clearly a victim of severe burns, with skin grafts fusing together and even his ears missing. The guard explained he was the tenant of apartment 2829. Due to complications from his burns, his hearing was impaired. My annoyed expression faltered. I quickly typed on my phone, asking if he was the one playing the piano at night. He pulled his hands from his pockets. Only stumps remained where his fingers should have been. He couldn't possibly play any melody. I was deeply embarrassed, unsure whether to express sympathy or not. Only when he turned to re-enter his apartment did I breathe a sigh of relief. Officer Wu, the chubby security guard, patted my shoulder warmly, telling me to reach out if I ever needed anything. I closed the door, my sleepiness vanished. If it wasn't him playing the piano, then perhaps he was playing music from a device. But he was deaf. Why would he play music? I rechecked the camera. The music I'd clearly heard in my apartment was completely inaudible in the video, even at maximum volume. This was truly strange. I planned to find the owner of apartment 2729 the next day and ask if he could record the piano sounds. Evidence would make it easier to involve the police. But the next morning the police found me first. Mr. Zhang, while showering, the tenant of apartment 2829 accidentally dislodged a tile, revealing a human hand behind it. The body parts were discovered within the 2 walls adjacent to your unit. We'd like you to return to the station for further investigation. I was now effectively a suspect. The walls on both sides were constructed with autoclaved aerated concrete, a type of brick made from cement and lime that significantly slows down the decomposition process. Forensics couldn't pinpoint the exact time of death, only narrowing it down to 3 to 9 months after the building's handover. Compared to my previous statement, the police's questions were far more incisive this time. The interior construction was handled entirely by the design company. I only dropped by to supervise after work. However, the police couldn't reach the construction company based on the contact information I provided. It was unclear if they'd absconded with the money or were genuinely involved in the murder. "I'm small potatoes compared to the management," I blurted out. "Aren't they more suspicious?" The officer taking notes immediately looked up. After handover, all anti-theft doors are locked. For unsold or unrented units, the management holds the keys. For occupied units, owners often leave a spare key with the management for convenience during construction. The officer continued. If the management secretly buried bricks containing bodies in unoccupied units at night, that would be a perfect way to hide them. Mr. Zhang, we understand you had a dispute with the project developer and were even taken to the police station. I immediately understood the implication. The management was controlled by the developer. My accusations against them would be seen as personal retaliation. They began questioning me in detail about my conflict with the developer. I was sure their files already contained everything, but cooperating with the investigation was my civic duty. I reluctantly recounted the entire story, reopening old wounds. I had caught the developer Zhang Qing sleeping with my girlfriend. For me, it was the darkest moment of my life. Zhang Qing, a man in his 30s, divorced, and a prominent real estate mogul, had spotted my girlfriend, Sun Ruoyu, when she came with me to view the apartment. Zhang Qing was handsome, wealthy, and generous with women. I was just a poor office worker, lucky to afford a pigeon-sized apartment. I couldn't blame her for cheating. In fact, before I found out, she was remarkably generous with me, perhaps out of guilt, spending money without a second thought. When I caught them, I was so enraged I stormed into the sales office, causing a scene. Both Zhang Qing and I ended up at the police station. But then, Zhang Qing offered a cash settlement and even took on the interior renovation and appliance procurement for my apartment. At that moment, I relented. Afterward, my girlfriend officially broke up with me. "Officers Zhang Qing and I reconciled," I said. "I have no reason to frame him after receiving the apartment. Actually, I was worried for a while that he would try to get revenge through this apartment. But the interior design company he used, Du Rong, was top-notch, and the appliances were all high-end. He's undeniably a generous businessman." When the police asked if I was still in contact with my ex-girlfriend, my heart pounded and my smile stiffened. Were they suspecting the deceased was Sun Ruyu? Impossible. Her WeChat status was updated just the day before yesterday. I showed them her WeChat friends list. Even after we broke up, we hadn't unfriended each other, for some unknown reason. Though I had blocked her updates from my feed, sometimes in the quiet of night, I couldn't help but click on her profile. Her WeChat was filled with designer bags, expensive meals costing thousands of yuan per person. Clearly, she was living well with Zhang Qing. The police's gaze held both suspicion and a touch of pity. "Thank you, Mr. Zheng, for your cooperation. Please keep your phone on and try not to leave the province. We'll contact you if anything new arises." Stepping out of the police station, the autumn wind sent shivers down my spine. There was one thing I hadn't told the police. If I looked closely at those photos, I suspected Sun Ruyu was already dead. "Mr. Zheng, you're back. You didn't accidentally say anything foolish, did you?" Li Jun intercepted me in the lobby, her eyes scrutinizing my face. "Sister Li, I'm not your prisoner," I retorted. As I stepped into the elevator, I could still hear Li Jun's indignant shout. "Whose sister? Do I look that old?" Li Jun was undeniably Zhang Qing's most loyal subordinate, always keeping a watchful eye on me. Was she afraid Sun Ruyu and I would reconcile? The thought choked me. That could never happen again. Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the bed and reopened Sun Ruyu's WeChat friends list. I examined each photo for nearly 10 minutes. She was always stylish, rarely posting selfies, finding them unsophisticated. Recently, her posts only showed hands holding ping-pong paddles or feet. These details were hard to identify. But after 2 years together, I knew her well enough. Sun Ruyu had a cat, and her right hand had a small scratch from a cat. Her body type was pear-shaped, but the shadows in the photos suggested a weight of at least 55 kilograms. Not to mention, the shoe size in the photos was wrong. Someone was clearly faking Sun Ruyu's WeChat updates. Where was she now? Had she truly been fed into a cement mixer and pressed into autoclaved, aerated concrete bricks? Besides the eyes I'd seen initially, I hadn't seen any other body parts to confirm my suspicions. After the body-containing bricks were removed from both walls, the strange noises vanished. I finally got a good night's sleep. The next morning, bathed in bright sunshine, I stepped into apartment 2831, which was now open. The previously damaged wall had been perfectly repaired, as if proclaiming to all residents passing by that nothing had ever happened. In Li Jun's eyes, I was a jinx, bringing her endless trouble. Every time I went to the office to charge my phone, she'd find an excuse to make things difficult. On my way out, I'd hear giggles from the women in management behind me. It turned out Li Jun had spread the news of my cuckolding everywhere. It was truly despicable. I was planning to find an opportunity to teach her a lesson under the guise of a homeowner's complaint when police arrived at the complex again. This time, the complainant was the resident of apartment 1840, who had repeatedly reported missing food. Unlike me, she rallied a group of residents to loudly demand the thief's apprehension. I went down to see what was happening, just in time to witness her berating Li Jun. "Your management, and you're stealing food? You're a fox in sheep's clothing. Aren't those plainclothes officers?" I heard a few older men muttering behind me. A short while later, the police entered apartment 1840 with a police dog. Soon, fierce barks erupted from inside. It seemed they'd found something unimaginable. After returning from the police station, the resident of apartment 1840 immediately moved out of the complex that night, also leaving all resident chat groups. 1839. "What happened today? I've been uneasy all day." 1740. "It's so loud upstairs they seem to be breaking down a wall." 618. "Can anyone at the scene tell us what's going on?" 2002. "It's the homicide police. Someone definitely died." 2009. "There's a kid crying all night on my floor. Can the police handle it?" I was about to type a few more supporting comments when 2002 was kicked out of the group by Lee Jun. Other smaller chat groups immediately erupted in debate. This time, the murder was 10 floors away from my unit. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking the police wouldn't come for me. To my surprise, before dawn, Detective Zhao called me relentlessly, waking me up. He even used the excuse of assisting with the investigation to get me leave from my company. When Detective Zhao told me they had found human stomach, intestines, and other digestive organs in the autoclaved aerated concrete bricks of apartment 1840, I immediately vomited my breakfast. This proved that the victim wasn't randomly shredded but was deliberately dismembered. Sun Ruoyu had a simple social circle and was good at avoiding conflict. She couldn't have been involved with such a cold-blooded killer. I mentally separated Sun Ruoyu from the victim and surprisingly felt a sense of relief. My wish for her happiness when we broke up was genuine. Detective Zhao said they now suspected someone in the management was involved in the case, but without solid evidence, they couldn't act hastily and risk tipping off the culprit. So, they wanted my help to monitor suspicious people and events in the apartment complex. Initially, I intended to refuse, but when he mentioned that assisting with the investigation could earn me tens of thousands of yuan, my resolve wavered. Soon after I bought the apartment, my father back home was diagnosed with rectal cancer. Even after rural insurance coverage, the remaining cost was substantial. I had considered selling the apartment, but without the property deed, I couldn't. Over the years, I hadn't made close friends, and I wasn't particularly close to my colleagues. When push came to shove, I couldn't borrow from anyone. The reward money Detective Zhao mentioned left me no reason to hesitate. I began meticulously recording recent events in a notebook, rereading and pondering them repeatedly. Finally, all the connections fell into place. If my deductions were correct, I'd soon find all the remaining body parts. Apartment 2831. Mournful cries, half a skull. Apartment 2829. Piano music at night, a pair of hands. Apartment 1840. Continuous food disappearance, digestive organs. Following this logic, would the remaining body parts hidden in other apartments also cause corresponding abnormal phenomena? I reviewed the resident group chat history and found that resident 820 had repeatedly complained about noisy footsteps from the floor above, while resident 920 retorted that he was on a business trip and his apartment was empty. Footsteps weren't those legs. I dismissed the unexplainable, supernatural phenomena and presented my theory to Detective Zhao, but he looked troubled. We can't just search residents' homes based on speculation alone, without concrete evidence. Should we tell the owner, "You might be harboring a body, please cooperate"? The police were bound by regulations, but I was just a free citizen. I fabricated a story for Officer Wu, telling him my friend on the 9th floor had a power outage. While he was busy checking, I secretly pulled the circuit breaker for apartment 920. "Officer Wu, look, I think that apartment's circuit breaker tripped. Quickly, ask the management to contact the owner. Spoiled food in the fridge is minor, but what if electrical appliances short-circuit and cause a fire? That's serious." Officer Wu panicked. When Li Jun rushed up, Detective Zhao and I were already waiting. "Officers, you know you can't just enter a resident's home and search it," Li Jun said, her voice brimming with self-righteousness. When she thought she was in the right, she didn't care about anyone else. "The police are conducting a safety inspection in the hallway. Why are you so agitated?" Detective Zhao was summoned by me, so I had to lead this part of the conversation. Li Jun scoffed, gave me a glance, and entered the password to open apartment 920. But before she could step inside, the police dog accompanying Detective Zhao lunged at the entrance, barking fiercely. Detective Zhao's expression immediately turned serious. In the corner of apartment 920's entrance hall, within the autoclaved aerated concrete bricks, a pair of human legs were indeed discovered. Due to the wall demolition process, the bricks were shattered. In a crack on the sole of the foot, I saw a black mole, identical to the mole on Sun Ruyu's foot. Leaving the police station, I immediately called Sun Ruoyu. Took a long time for someone to answer. The female voice on the other end was muffled and indistinct, and the surrounding noise made it impossible to discern clearly. But having seen the distinctive feature on the body part, I could confidently confirm that this person was an imposter. I stood there, stunned. On the side of the road a moment later, I opened my messaging app and sent a text. "Oh, by the way, that money I borrowed from you, just transfer it to your card." My grip tightened on my phone, my heart pounding with the rhythm of the red light across the street. 45, 44, 30, 29, 17. Whatever, you don't have to pay it back if you don't want to. The bustling crowd, the endless stream of cars. Seeing Sun Royu's reply, I felt like I'd plummeted into hell, dimly perceiving a demonic silhouette. I had never borrowed money from Sun Royu. I didn't know who held the phone on the other end, but one thing was certain. The real Sun Royu was truly dead. She had become a part of that apartment building. I lowered my head, staring at the rain-soaked ground, droplet by droplet. When I looked up, it was raining. Rain lashed against my face. I didn't know if those warm drops earlier had been tears. I picked up my phone and called Zhang Qing. "We need to talk about Sun Royu." I gave him no choice, heading straight to his villa. Zhang Qing emerged into the courtyard in a bathrobe, his face a mix of arrogance and impatience. But when I told him Sun Royu was missing, his expression immediately tightened. "We broke up ages ago. Only a man like you would marry that kind of woman. I didn't buy her that bag, and I've never been to that restaurant. She must have found a new sugar daddy." I swung my fist straight at his eye. His increasingly despicable face made me lose control. Still not satisfied, I landed another punch. This time blood splattered. "I'll sue you. You'll go to jail." Zhang Qing clutched his face, attempting to escape into the courtyard. I grabbed his throat, pressing him to the ground. An unnamed, unknown rage consumed me. Whether it was his contempt for decent people or something else entirely, in that moment, I utterly lost my mind. Zhang Qing's groans grew fainter. I sat on him, sweating profusely. Just as I was about to stand up, a woman in a bathrobe rushed out of the villa. She was in her early 30s, meticulously groomed and slightly plump. She screamed at Zhang Qing, who was pinned beneath me. "Husband!" I remembered seeing a photo of Zhang Qing and his wife at the groundbreaking ceremony in the sales office when I bought my apartment. This woman was Zhang Qing's ex-wife, but given the current situation between them, it was clear they had never truly divorced. If Zhang Qing genuinely intended to remarry his ex-wife, Sun Royu's existence would undoubtedly become incredibly awkward. But from what I knew of her, Sun Royu would absolutely not cling to Zhang Qing, not even for money. So what was the reason? What reason could have led to her dismemberment to cover up a secret like this? The next morning I still had to go to work, but I hadn't slept all night. The entire world felt as if someone had pressed the pause button. My small room still held a 1.8-meter wide bed. This was because, during the 2 years Sun Royu and I lived together in a rented room, she often kicked in her sleep, frequently sending me tumbling to the floor. She was an orphan raised by a foster father, and inherently a bit fragile and spoiled. Perhaps Zhang Qing was right. I had been so weak that I silently waited for her to be abandoned, waited for her to regret and return to me. But by this moment it was all impossible. All morning I couldn't focus on work. During my lunch break, I checked the resident group chat and saw everyone discussing formaldehyde odors. 3:25. Lately, I've been feeling short of breath and my memory is poor. I should probably measure the formaldehyde concentration again. 3:05. Me too. If I wasn't carrying both rent and mortgage payments, I wouldn't have moved in so quickly. 3:16. Everyone's like that. I'm about to move in. If anyone has a good way to remove formaldehyde, please share. These 3 people were on the same floor, chatting in perfect rhythm. If you told me they weren't trying to sell some detoxifying product, I wouldn't believe you. 2012. Whose kid is crying all night on this floor? I'm going crazy. Floor 20. If I remembered correctly, Everyone who had complained about a child crying in the middle of the night was a resident of the 20th floor. Yet no parents had ever come forward to apologize. I remembered Lee Jun once sending security to investigate, but they couldn't find the source of the sound. I immediately went online to find the building's architectural blueprints and discovered something. Those apartments were all adjacent to the north emergency staircase of the building. A theory formed in my mind, just waiting for tonight to confirm it. I had to find evidence, undeniable proof to identify the victim. That night, I deliberately put on soft-soled shoes and descended the north emergency staircase. The emergency lights were completely out, plunging areas untouched by moonlight into absolute darkness. Floor 24, floor 23, floor 22. When the first faint cry of an infant echoed, I immediately held my breath, descending step by step. Even if something strange was present, I believed it wasn't there to harm people. Only humans intentionally harm their own kind. I took each step carefully. At the bend, I peered down, seeing nothing. Suddenly, the exit sign on the left wall flashed a vivid green, instantly bathing the entire stairwell in an eerie, otherworldly glow. Before I could even breathe again, I felt something crawl up my back to my neck. It was ice-cold and slimy like mucus, exactly like a venomous snake bearing its fangs right at my throat. I instinctively swung my hand to grab it, a completely foolish reaction. In the mesmerizing green light in the palm of my hand was a translucent mass of flesh that had stopped crying. It was a fetus, still with its umbilical cord. I swallowed a gasp, holding the fetus in my hand, following the direction of the umbilical cord downwards, to the wall opposite the staircase on the 20th floor. The umbilical cord stretched out from this wall. I pressed my other hand against the wall, seemingly able to feel a faint fetal heartbeat from within. Immediately after, my eyes blurred, and the fetus and umbilical cord vanished, leaving only an incense burner and scattered ashes on the ground. Who had come here to make offerings with me? I stared at the wall in front of me, a growing sense of unease. So, Sun Ruoyu was pregnant when she died, and the fetus was quite developed. A girl who was afraid of the dark, encased with her child in a wall, never seeing the sun again. In those final moments, did she have any regrets? I pulled out a lighter and a pack of cigarettes. Since we broke up, my smoking addiction had worsened than ever. I lit a cigarette, held it between my lips, took 2 drags, then plunged the lit cigarette directly into the incense burner. Just as I turned to leave, a light suddenly appeared from below the staircase. I quickly ducked into the shadows along the wall, listening silently to the approaching footsteps. Clop, clop, clop. Miss Sun, please reincarnate quickly. Don't linger here and be burdened. The injustice has a source. The suffering has a master. I am merely a subordinate, and this is unavoidable. I saw the person pull out fruit from a bag, bowing respectfully towards the wall. After arranging the offerings, she was about to light incense when she discovered my half-smoked cigarette smoldering in the burner. The stream of whispered apologies she was murmuring choked, like a stoppered gourd, unable to produce any more sound. The flame from the lighter illuminated the cigarette in my mouth, and also cast a stark light on the pale, vacant face of the person who had just turned around. Well, housekeeper Lee Jun, what a coincidence. Perhaps you can tell me how Sun Ruoyu died. Just as I suspected, after Detective Zhao and his team searched the 20th floor emergency staircase area, they excavated more body parts from the wall. Forensic examination revealed it was the victim's lower abdomen, containing an unborn fetus. Connecting the found body parts, they were still missing half a skull and the upper torso. DNA testing of the fetus found no matching samples, so the police still couldn't identify the deceased. Little Zheng, you truly are a genius. Tell me, how did you discover this time? Detective Zhao personally escorted me out of the station. His arm draped over my shoulder, but his eyes were full of doubt. Or was it just a coincidence? I showed Detective Zhao the chat log from the resident group, saying I suspected the sounds of stray cats in heat were mistaken by 20th floor residents for a child crying at night. I couldn't sleep, so I took some sausages down to lure the cat, but it just stood still in front of that wall. Detective Zhao pressed me again about the previous incident. I fabricated another story, saying the owner was on a business trip, but suspicious footsteps appeared. So I feared a thief and made up a random excuse. In my heart, I had a vague feeling as if an invisible hand was guiding me along a predetermined path to uncover the entire truth. Is it Sun Ruoyu? Is she crying out for justice, asking me to help her get it? This time, I stood in front of the police station for a long time, my palms clammy with cold sweat, before finally calling Zhang Qing. The last time I had hit him right at his villa gate, and he didn't call the police. But this time when I arrived, he only agreed to talk in his courtyard. 5 million. Damn it, are you insane with poverty? 5 million for 2 lives. Not expensive at all. What 2 lives? Zhang Qing's face showed clear panic. You and your wife. 2 billionaires' lives. I knew everything Li Jun told me that night on the staircase. I knew that Zhang Qing and his wife had cruelly murdered Sun Ruoyu, a pregnant woman, and disposed of her body. Or do you want me to tell Detective Zhao that I know the victim's identity now? Don't say anything, let's talk this through. Stepping out of Zhang Qing's villa, I carried a suitcase containing 1 million in cash, and a thin bank draft was tucked into my chest pocket. The money, which I might never have earned in my life, was now securely in my hands. That 5 million was not just to buy the lives of Zhang Qing and his wife, but also to save my father's life. I immediately set off for my hometown that night, my heart pounding throughout the journey. I told myself it was because I was carrying such a large sum of money. My father was even thinner than the last time I saw him. His temporary bed in the crowded hospital corridor, where people came and went constantly, didn't even ensure him minimal rest. My mother, with weak legs, would sit by the bed for a moment before shakily standing up to make room for others. The first thing I did was go to the cashier to pay off all his debts, then deposit a substantial amount into the hospital account, requesting them to arrange a private room for my father as soon as possible. Before coming to the hospital, I had used cash to buy my parents a fully furnished house in the city. The remaining balance in my account I transferred entirely to my mother's card. When I arrived with a bag of health supplements, their worried expressions instantly transformed into surprise and joy. But where's Ruoyu? Why didn't she come with you? Your dad really liked that girl. Yes, she even visited your dad earlier this year, saying you two were discussing wedding plans, either at the end of the year or early next spring. Just mentioning Sun Ruoyu, their faces lit up even more. She had stayed in our hometown for a few days before, always making my parents smile more, even making them eat an extra half bowl of rice. My parents, like me, had long considered her their daughter-in-law. When did everything begin to change? Wait, Dad, you said Sun Ruoyu visited you earlier this year? We broke up last year. My parents exchanged glances, a fleeting look of worry. After ensuring that Sun Ruoyu and I hadn't had a fight, they finally recounted the whole story. Ruoyu came alone several times, always bringing lots of things. Later we found out it was all money. She said she was busy and told your dad not to tell you, and that you two would find a way to manage the medical expenses. This child is too good. Nowadays, even biological daughters might not do that. Every word from my parents felt like it was tearing at my flesh and tendons. My legs trembled so much I couldn't stand. I remembered when we broke up, her calm eyes as she looked at me and said, "I have no regrets." It turned out the one who was a fool from beginning to end was always me. When Ruoyu was with Zhang Qing, it was my toughest time. Just after paying off the last apartment installment and still owing a month's rent, I received the devastating news that my father had cancer. To make ends meet, I took out many online loans. Unable to pay, I was ambushed by debt collectors after work and beaten half to death. From that day on, Ruoyu began to change. Her previous jokes became sharp and cruel. She started to criticize me for being poor, useless, and having no future, slowly eroding the love between us. And that night I caught them, thinking back, I'm afraid it was a carefully orchestrated play by her. Not only did it help me get compensation to treat my father's illness, but it also took care of the interior design for my new apartment. Li Jun told me that over the years, Zhang Qing had many lovers, but none were as cunning as Ruoyu. When she found out she was pregnant, she tried to hide it until the fetus was well developed. Ruoyu thought she had secured half of Zhang Qing's assets. Unexpectedly, the person who accompanied her to the prenatal checkup was Li Jun herself, and she reported this to Zhang Qing's ex-wife. That wife was a decisive and ruthless woman. To protect her biological son's inheritance rights, she persuaded Zhang Qing to murder and dismember Ruoyu. She even personally impersonated son Ruoyu to update her WeChat status. Ruoyu was strangled to death, her body dismembered at the construction site, mixed with cement and lime, and then cast into autoclaved aerated concrete bricks. Under Li Jun's arrangement, each brick containing a body part was secretly built into various walls throughout the apartment complex, unknown to anyone. Director Zhang said that Miss Sun called your name until her last breath, so he deliberately had her body built into the walls on both sides of your room, so you two could still be friends. Though Li Jun trembled uncontrollably while recounting the story, her eyes still gleamed with disdain, a mockery of love inferior to money. It was that gaze, so glaring, that made me drag her to the rooftop, pushing her down the stairs again and again until her body was a bloody mess. When the police below were busy extracting body parts from the walls, no one realized that a collaborator was dying several floors above. At that moment, looking at Li Jun, I only saw one thing: she was dying. After arranging everything for my parents, I set off to return. Throughout the journey, Detective Zhao's calls came several times. Unlike before, my anger and fear had now turned to tranquility. Strange things continued to happen in the apartment complex. First, the building manager, Li Jun, was found severely injured in the attic hallway by a resident and rushed to the hospital. She hadn't woken up yet. Then, several residents on the third floor successively exhibited discomfort symptoms and were diagnosed with carbon monoxide poisoning. The police immediately led a search of every apartment on the third floor, and they found the last body part: the heart, lungs, and half of the skull, the final piece in the horrifying puzzle. Detective Zhao quickly identified the victim as Sun Ruoyu. Following every lead they had, they finally gathered enough evidence to indict Zhang Qing and his wife. With undeniable evidence, Zhang Qing had nothing left to deny, but he counter-accused me of blackmailing him for 5 million. I was officially wanted and couldn't return to my apartment, forced to wander and hide throughout the city. Finally, on the day of Sun Ruoyu's cremation, I snuck into the apartment complex, quietly making my way to the rooftop. I had once misunderstood her, once slandered her in my heart, once done wrong things. I wanted to personally go down and ask for her forgiveness. If it was truly her, Ruoyu would definitely forgive me. I tiptoed forward. From this height, everyone below looked like tiny specks of dust. Life, whether joyful or sad, ultimately returns to dust and earth. Just as I spread my arms, preparing to embrace death, a hoarse, aged voice suddenly spoke from behind me. "You coward! I truly don't understand what Ruoyu saw in you people." The strong wind made even a simple act like turning around incredibly difficult. Through the strands of hair whipped into my eyes by the wind, I saw the person standing at the entrance to the rooftop. Officer Wu, the chubby security guard. Ruoyu paid for her mistake. But are you going to wait until your next life to pay for yours? It turned out that the person Sun Ruoyu always spoke of, the great godlike foster father in her eyes, was Officer Wu. He had followed his daughter's blood trail back here for revenge. Officer Wu had no fixed residence. As Ruoyu once said, he was a person who feared deities but was also reckless, a contradictory individual. I had once thought that the fantastical stories she told were merely an oversanctification of childhood memories of her foster father. But Officer Wu said he truly felt his daughter's death. When he arrived, he personally witnessed Li Jun and others building her body into the wall. Could spirits truly exist in this world? Have you been watching all of this? No, death is the end. Officer Wu said some things couldn't be explained, but others could. The water pipes in apartment 2830 were my doing. Just by increasing the water pressure on the entire floor, leaks would appear. And when I was the first to inspect, I used a highly absorbent towel to dry the watermarks and then locked the main valve. As for the piano music and crying from the adjacent rooms, those were actually Bluetooth speakers hidden in the apartments. Officer Wu has a certificate for working in the fire control room of the apartment complex. He used the blind spots of the camera system to sneak into apartment 1840 to steal food. Then he deleted the footage of him entering apartment 920. He also caught a stray cat and lured it with canned food to howl every night on the 20th floor staircase. He used his position to manipulate the ventilation system on the 3rd floor, causing carbon monoxide levels in the apartments to exceed dangerously high levels. The feeling I once had was indeed not wrong. It was him from the shadows secretly guiding me, placing the blade of revenge for Ruoyu into my hand. But in the end, I couldn't stab my enemies with that blade. The wind on the rooftop blew fiercely. The whistling wind drowned out my agonizing sobs. Jingzhen, repentance is for the living. Don't let Ruoyu be disappointed even at the very end. Officer Wu left. Just as Ruoyu once said. He was a very open and free-spirited person. When the wind on the rooftop finally dried my tears, I turned on my phone, dialed Detective Zhao's number. I confess,